Okay, let's get right into this because the whole idea here just sounds completely backwards. I mean, think about it. When you want more coastline, you build out into the sea. But what if you did the exact opposite? What if you pulled the sea inland and carved a brand new coastline right out of the desert? It sounds like something out of science fiction, but that is exactly what one city in Kuwait decided to do.
And that's the big question, right? How do you even begin to do that? We're not talking about some little channel or a boat marina here. We are talking about creating 250 kilometers, that's over 150 miles, of new, prime waterfront property where there was nothing but sand. This was an engineering feat that had to fight against the laws of nature every single step of the way. So, to really get how wild this was, you have to look at how everyone else does it. You've probably seen pictures of Dubai's famous Palm Islands. They built those by pushing land out into the sea. An incredible challenge for sure. But Kuwait's idea was arguably way more complex. They wanted to bring the entire Persian Gulf inland, creating this massive, stable, and living network of waterways deep inside their own country.
So, why? Why on earth would you attempt something so audacious? Well, to understand that, you gotta go back to the 1980s and look at this unique problem, this paradox that Kuwait was facing. Here's the thing. Kuwait was and is one of the wealthiest nations in the world. We're talking staggering oil money, the most valuable currency on the planet. But they had a problem that all that money couldn't easily fix. Most of the country is just desert, and its pretty small coastline was already packed. For the super rich, the #1 status symbol was a home on the water. And there just wasn't enough to go around. And this is where the dream really started. It began with a visionary businessman, a guy named Khalid Al-Marzouk. He looked out at all that empty desert and didn't see a problem. He saw a canvas. His idea was, simple in theory, but just breathtaking in scale. If we can't build by the sea, then let's just bring the sea to us. Let's create an entire city where every single luxury home gets its own private beach.
So the vision was there. The plans were being drawn up. But just as this incredible dream was starting to take shape, it was completely shattered by the brutal reality of war.
So in 1986, a top British engineering firm was brought in. They were using state-of-the-art computer simulations to design this incredibly complex network of canals. But then, in 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. The whole country was thrown into chaos, and this dream of a city by the sea was frozen, stopped dead in its tracks. A year later, as the war was ending, the retreating Iraqi army committed one final, devastating act of destruction against Kuwait. It was an act that would poison the land and cripple the economy for years to come. They set over 700 of Kuwait's oil wells on fire. Just try to picture that for a second. The scale is almost unimaginable. The skies literally turned black in the middle of the day. The country's lifeblood, its main source of wealth, was just going up in smoke. For 10 long months, those fires just burned and burned. And in that time, an estimated 1.8 billion barrels of oil were lost forever. To put that in perspective, that's enough oil to power the entire planet for about 2 weeks. It was a catastrophe on every level. And the cost just to put the fires out was a staggering $1.5 billion. So after the invasion, after the fires, Kuwait was in survival mode. They were focused on rebuilding the nation, not on some ambitious, crazy megaproject. The dream of a sea city, it was all but dead. By the time Kuwait finally got back on its feet, the world, and especially the region, had changed dramatically. A rival had emerged, and they were busy capturing the world's attention. And that rival, of course, was Dubai. In all those years Kuwait spent recovering, Dubai was building. They built the iconic Burj Al Arab Hotel. They launched their own artificial island projects, and they'd even started construction on what would become the world's tallest building. The international spotlight had completely shifted. But Kuwait wasn't about to let its dream just fade away. In 2004, driven by this renewed sense of national pride and a real determination to get back in the game, the project was brought back to life. And now, it wasn't just about building a luxury city. It was about making a statement to the world. It was a comeback. So the project was back on, but now came the really hard part. Actually building it. And this meant solving 3 absolutely massive engineering problems that seemed to defy the laws of physics and nature itself. The very first problem was the ground. The whole area was full of this stuff called silt. And as you can see, silt is basically a builder's worst nightmare. It's soft, it's watery, it's got no structural integrity. You can't build a shed on it, let alone an entire city.
So what do? Well, the solution was methodical and just enormous in scale. First, they dug up the top layer of good sand and put it to the side. Then, they dug out all that useless, mushy silt. They refilled those giant holes with the good sand. And then, this is the amazing part, they compacted it by dropping a 15,000-kilogram weight from a crane over and over, more than 1,200 times a day, to create a rock-solid foundation.
Okay, so the ground is solid. Problem number 2, the water. When you dig this massive, complex system of canals, you create a huge risk. If that water just sits there and doesn't circulate, it becomes stagnant. It'll grow algae, it'll start to smell. You basically end up with a giant, disgusting swamp. So how do you stop that from happening?
The solution was so simple, it was brilliant. They used one-way tidal gates. Here's how it works. When the tide comes in, the gates open up and all this fresh seawater rushes into the city's canals. But when the tide goes out, they slam shut. So it uses the sea's own natural power to completely flush and refresh all of the water, keeping it perfectly clean and clear, all day, every day, automatically.
And the final problem. You can't have private beaches without actual beach sand. But desert sand is no good. It's way too fine and dusty. So they literally invented an industrial process to manufacture perfect beach sand. They'd take regular old desert sand, wash it with water to separate all the particles, and then filter it to keep only the bigger grains. And they had to repeat that process 4 times for every single batch, creating thousands of tons of perfect, custom-made beach sand every day. So after decades of setbacks, a devastating war, and solving these seemingly impossible engineering puzzles, the dream that was first imagined way back in the 1980s was finally becoming a reality. And the numbers behind this thing are just staggering. It took over 32 years. It created 250 kilometers of brand new coastline. That's actually more than Kuwait's original natural coastline. They moved 74 times million cubic meters of sand. Today, 4 out of the 5 phases are totally complete, and the city, now named the Sabah Al-Ahmad Sea City in honor of the late Emir, stands as this incredible monument to perseverance. And really, that's what it leaves you with. This project went against all conventional wisdom, it survived a war, and it overcame these monumental challenges from nature itself. It just proves that with enough vision and enough ingenuity and sheer determination, even the most impossible-sounding dreams can be carved into reality. It really makes you wonder, what other challenges out there that we think are impossible really aren't?